Well, as I stated, I was going to change the oil in the Galaxie after they salted the roads because I probably wouldn't be driving it much anymore. And we've had 2-3 inch snowfalls, and they only salted a few little intersections here and there. There's very little salt on the roads. So who knows, I may still drive the car, but I do want to change the oil on it because I think it'll be very little I'm going to be driving it. They're predicting a rain-snow mix tomorrow, and we've had a lot of, typical early winter weather. And so like I say, I doubt I'll be driving it much anymore. So thought I'd, first thing I want to do before I change the oil is warm it up, but I thought I'd just pull a stick out. There's a mark right there I made on the stick. That's where it's full. And so oil doesn't look that bad on the stick. It's got almost 2,000 miles on the oil change. And so anyway, the snow, like I say, we had snow until last night. There was snow on the ground, but it warmed up overnight and it all melted. And it's 52 Fahrenheit, or about what, 11 Celsius there it looks like. So yeah, so the lack of snow, it's still damp out, but it's warm enough to where I can open up the garage and crank the engine up and get the car warmed up here. It's been, I don't know, a good week since I've had the car out because of the weather. So let's get it warming up here. Let me turn the radio off so I don't get a copyright. Well, so the gas is evaporated out of the carburetor, I take it. Set the parking brake because I'm going to let it warm up in neutral. And I have a lot of people that ask me how long the cold light stays on. I'm just going to let the camera go until the cold light goes out here. The oil just drains out quicker, and it mixes it all up, so you get all the dirt out of the engine. I think that's one of the most important things of oil changes. Doing it on a totally warmed up engine, preferably drive it on the road, but like I say, the streets and the driveway and everything are still kind of damp and wet in places, so I don't want to take a chance on getting a salt mist or something on the car. So we'll just warm it up right here in the garage, and later on, if it dries out, I'll take it for a little run on the road. I'll probably have to jack the car up to grease all the fittings. There's grease fittings on the U-joints and stuff, and I want to check the gear oil and the axle and kind of look the undercarriage over too. So that's about it. Yeah, I use the parking brake in this car. It's about the only time I don't apply is when I put it in the garage here, but that's the little indicator that shows that the parking brake is on. Alright, back to the cold light so you can see when that puppy goes out. And a lot of you may want to just skip through. You may not want to watch the video until the cold light goes out, but I don't think this is going to be too long of a video, so this will add a little to it for the people that want to watch it. And in the really cold, it takes about 1.5 miles for the choke to open up if I start it and go cold, without warming it up any. And I don't remember what temperature that cold light turns off. I think maybe 120, 120, somewhere around in there. Fahrenheit, that is. There we go, it just went out. And it's flickered back on. There we go. Sometimes it does flicker. And the choke won't, see how the choke's still on? Still takes a little bit longer because the engine, you know, I'll get the digital thermometer and put on it. You can see the engine won't be that warm. Not a lot of humidity in the air today, so not a lot of steam coming out of the tailpipes. The other day when I had it out, it was super cold, and the steam was coming out of the tailpipes for quite a while. I mean, it was like in the 20s. I think that was the day it turned 80,000 miles. It was like 29 degrees out when I was out. Up on the fast idle will warm up quicker. I'm sure the choke would kick off now, but I want to warm it up to change the oil, so that's why I'm going to leave it on the fast idle cam until everything's warmed up thoroughly. Alright, I'm going to turn you guys off here for a moment. Alright, I just felt the warm air starting to come out of the radiator. I think that shows up. So the thermostat is now open. Just let it run a little longer. The sheet metal is starting to get a little temperature in it now. Yeah, you know, you warm everything up, the sheet metal and everything, and then the oil just drains down quicker and easier, and it's stirred it all up, so any of the dirt that might have settled in the sump is mixed up with the oil. That's why I warm them up good. Like I say, preferably after driving them 4 or 5 miles. Alright, it's been sitting here racing for a while. I'll just kick it down to the curb idle and let it idle at curb idle for a few minutes. You can probably hear me a little better now without the engine roaring. I just want to get the oil good and hot. This thing runs really nice. It's probably because I've been driving it regularly. By the way, I changed oil in the truck. It had been a year and 1 day, and it had 980 miles on the oil change, and 740 of them were driving it back and forth up north once. So yeah, I don't hardly drive the truck, but after a year I wanted to change the oil in it. You know, I don't like to let the oil go over a year, even though it didn't even have 1,000 miles on the oil. So yeah, the oil still looked pretty clean coming out, but it's been a year, so I always change my oil in my vehicles every fall if I haven't met the, you know, mileage criteria for changing the oil. Got my jack so I can jack it up to do the grease job and stuff. Still looks pretty good. caught in the rain with it numerous times, and still pretty clean. Well, I wash it after I get caught in the rain, but it probably could use an undercarriage wash. Yeah, she's warming up a little bit more now. Well, let me get my drain pan, and I painted a oil filter. This is the oil filter, and I already painted it gold so that you know, I can put that magnetic decal on it. For those of you that are new to my channel, yeah, I even tried to make the oil filter look original on this thing with I put a decal on a magnet, paint the filter gold, and then it looks like a original 66 oil filter. Alright, let me get my pans installed. Another thing too, the heat in this car cranks. I just put the door window up and I got the heater fan on. There's low, medium, and high. Listen how nice and quiet that's on high. A lot of times you don't even need the fan on in the car. You just turn the heat levers over and the air blowing in through the cowl out in front there. There's that vented cowl blows air, and as long as these air vents, this air vent is closed, it blows out the heater duct when you turn this on if you're driving down the road without the fan on. But yeah, the fan is super quiet in this car, and like I say, the heat really cranks in it. I just wanted to kind of put the windows up and show you, you know, if you remember that, when I got the car, the blower motor didn't work, and then I got it to go and it squealed, and so I took it out and lubed it all up and lubed the bearings. It'll drill a little hole in the end of the motor where the one bearing is, put a few drops of oil in it, and I just put a little bit of tape over the hole, and so dirt doesn't get in it. Listen how nice that heater fan runs, the original one. That's awesome. Alright, I'm going to turn the engine off so I can start draining the oil and change the filter. Alright, I'm not going to video taking the filter off or draining the plug. I don't want to get my camera oily. So I'll get it draining, clean my hands up, and then I'll show you what the oil and stuff looks like. Now the oil's almost all drained out now. Don't you love it though when you go out of your way to try not to spill oil, and then you bash the pan or something and slap oil everywhere? Well, yeah, that's what I did. Should have taken, well, the roads would be muddy. Take it out to my brother's and throw it on his hoist and do it, but I don't want to drive it down muddy roads. This is what I did for the oil filter. So this is just a decal. I think I got it from Autocrafters or whatever the heck the name of them is. And I got some sheet magnet that I stuck it to. And I just wrap it around and stick it to the oil filter so I can reuse it, because these decals are like 10 bucks a piece. And I'm not spending that on a decal for an oil filter every time I change the oil. If the car sat in a museum and was, you know, the oil's changed every 10 years or so, who would care? But I drive my cars. What's the point in having them if you're not going to use them, you know what I mean? So anyway, I'm just going to let the oil drain a little bit. In the meantime, I think I'll start jacking it up so I can grease the fittings. I filled the filter up most of the way. I mean, I stood here and poured oil in it, and it'd take you 20 minutes to fill it all the way by hand. But I filled it up, you know, the best I can. It's 3/4 full anyway, and I oiled the gasket, and I cleaned the oil filter adapter off on the engine both sides, so that's nice and clean. You can see the oil still dripping out of the sump. I don't know if you can see that reflecting down in the pan or not, but I'm going to put the new filter on, then put the magnet on after I put the filter on. That way I don't mess this up when I tighten this. And I paint the top edges too, because you can see a little bit of this edge. And it looked funny white the first time I did it, so since then I paint that top edge gold too. Went and got a light. So now you can see the new oil filter's installed. I screwed it and tightened it on there with the magnet off. And then I put the magnet on after it was all said and done. A little dust on the oil pan. I'll have to, you know, usually I wash it all up in the spring. You know, I mean, if there is, it doesn't look like there's a speck of oil on this engine anywhere. And, you know, usually that prevents corrosion over the winter if you have oil on stuff. I mean, look at that. A little bit around the, just normal seepage. Pretty clean. Pretty darn clean still, considering how much I've driven it. And, oil. So let me, a little difficult getting out under the car, back up and out with this health issue, and thank you for everyone for your prayers and everything. I think everything will, I'm hoping everything will be all right at the end of the day. But anyway, let me just clean up a little bit here and there, and then I'll put the plug back in, and then I'm going to put the oil in the engine, then I'll jack it up and you know, go over the rest of the undercarriage there. Can you see? Does it all show up under there? It looks pretty good still. Yeah, still looks nice. Just put a jack there to give me a little bit more room right here. It's only jacked up an inch or two. You can see where it was dripping without the filter on it. That's why I always put cardboard under my cars, just so when I work on them I don't get oil spots all over the floor. You know, it was no filter and it was dripping out of the adapter, so that's why I put the filter on. All right, let me put the plug in, put the oil in the engine. Thought I'd just show a little thing. I just took like a washer fluid, or, you know, a round jug, and I just took some hardware cloth and kind of bent it around in there to hold it a few inches off the bottom. And then what I do is I just take my dirty oil filters and set them in there, and they can drain out, and that way you're not throwing them full of oil in the garbage can. And then I can just pour this back into the jug when after I put the oil in the engine, and take it to the auto parts. They recycle it there. Used to be really easy to, you'd take it to any gas station or any service place to get rid of oil. Now, because they made antifreeze toxic waste, no place will take oil. It's hard to get places to take oil now. But this is the zinc additive, or maple syrup, whatever you want to call it. One thing I learned with the first oil change I did on this car is put the oil in the engine a little slower, because I just tipped the jug up, filled the funnel, started filling it. Next thing I know, it was overflowing out of here, down here, and down into there, and yeah, it made a huge mess I had to clean up. I'm just gonna let that dump in the motor for a few minutes. This is this car has positive crankcase ventilation, but this is the intake for it, and that's like a wire mesh. And you clean it, and then you oil it, and then the dirt sticks in the oily wire mesh, and then you just wash it out a couple times a year and re-oil it. And seeing it's clean as a whistle, I'm not gonna do anything to it. And the PCV valve's right there. And the power steering belt, I notice, is down in the pulley a little bit and a little loose. So I think I'll get a new power steering belt and put a new, it doesn't squeal or anything when I turn, but that's definitely loose. And, you know, I bead blast all the pulleys on cars that sit, because if you don't, if they're rough, they act like a file on the belt. And as I remember, that power steering pulley had some pretty good pits in it when I bead blast. I had to rebuild the pump. If you're a new viewer of mine and you haven't gone back and looked at the past videos, yeah, I rebuilt and resealed the pump. It was leaking out of the shaft, so you got to press this pulley off the shaft, and while it was off, I bead blasted it and painted it so, you know, wouldn't cause wear on the belt. The alternator belt is fine. That's nice and snug and no wear. So next day or two, I'll pick up a belt for the power steering pump and change that too. Another thing too, I put new windshield wiper blades on the Escape yesterday. What a nightmare those are to put on. I hate working on these new, I mean, these old things, these things are so simple and easy to change. You know, it takes a couple minutes, and the new stuff, you got to sit there with the directions and figure out what plastic piece needs to be on or off, or, you know, and you spend, God, 15-20 minutes changing a wiper blade. That's ridiculous. Something that should, you know, take a minute. But I like to put those like blades, you know, that don't like these blades here. See how they're in these slots back in the day, and they move in those slots to fit the contour of the glass. And the snow and ice would freeze those little channels to where that blade couldn't move in this. Then you get big areas that didn't wipe. If you remember, if you're my age, you probably remember that. And then they came out with these blades that are like, let me get it out of here so you can see it. It's hard to do this one-handed. There's a couple of the pieces that had to fall off, but see how it's all like one thing, and you bend it. It's kind of flexible, so it'll contour to the glass all the time, and you don't get those areas that don't wipe from the snow and ice. You know, and especially if you're in a southern climate or an area where you don't get snow. Yeah, this type of blade is a must in the northern climate if you want to see during a snowfall, you know, because otherwise your stuff freezes up and then you get big areas that don't wipe. So anyway, yeah, the Escape needed new blades. I should probably, it's been a long time since I put them on the truck, but I never drive it, and it's always kept inside, so they wipe pretty good still, so I'm just gonna leave them. All right, let me get the oil in the crankcase now that I'm done babbling about that. This is about the rate I have to pour it in. Otherwise, if I fill the funnel, it runs out around the base there. So I just pour it in like this. You could probably pour it in without even using a funnel. But that way I don't overflow the valve cover. Make a mess. Well, it doesn't overfill the valve cover. I think it's just there's a baffle in there, and I don't think it can flow by the baffle quick enough into the valve cover. There's just a couple little holes in it that allow the oil through and the air through, so that, you know, you don't get a bunch of blow-by out it or anything. So that's why they do what they do. That funnel's sitting right on the bottom of the baffle too. All right, I'm going to let that jug drain a moment there. All right, just so you can see a little of the dirty oil, what it looks like when I pour it into the jug. It sounds like it's really windy out. I can hear the, let me turn the funnel. Maybe you can see a little better if I turn the funnel a little bit. Try not to spill too much of it or overflow the jug. There we go. I'll leave the pan sit up on end for a little bit, and then I'll dump it out more in a little bit. That lets the oil, just let it sit like that, lets the oil settle down and dump it out the rest of the way. I got the video, or the chassis all greased. I didn't video it. This is what I used. I bought this pneumatic grease gun in an estate sale, brand new in the box. And I have one of these lever lock and lube fittings on the end. You push it and then you can put it over your fitting and release it and it won't come off. I really like that. But I'll show you the underneath. Looks pretty good. The transmission leak is definitely the sump. I can clearly see that that's what that is. There's the lights back here. I greased the fitting on the rear of the drive shaft, so you can kind of, I timed the fittings the same so they both point in the same direction. You always put your fitting here and just kind of see the undercarriage. Whoa, why I'm under here. Show you on this front U-joint. I can get to that a little easier. It's hard to crawl around under here right now. You know, with health issues and stuff. I got to change my clothes before I get in the car. I had my grease gun and I pumped it to see if it was squirting grease, and I was on that side and it squirted it clear across down the floor over here, and then when I came over and greased this side I forgot and I laid right in it. So yeah, but see how the grease fitting is? See how it's facing the drive shaft? If you face them the yoke, you'll never get your grease gun on them. Always face them towards the shaft. And time them the same so you don't have to twist your shaft twice. This way, you know, I just had to jack the, get this the right way up, jack the tire up enough, get it off the ground so I could turn the shaft to get the fittings to point down. But the transmission's really nice and clean and dry. I wiped the sump off, but it's leaking out of this. Yeah, it just leaks very little. I mean, almost not enough to worth worrying about, but leaks right around this right here. See how the gaskets pushed out? I got a little carried away with the wrench tightening those up, so I'll have to get a new sump gasket. And this has drains on the torque converter, so I can drain the converter. Maybe I'll just change all the fluid in the transmission this winter. Fix that gasket. To drain this thing, it's pretty nice. You take the dipstick tube out, and that drains the sump. And then you can pull this inspection. Let me see if I can show it. That inspection cover off, and then you can get a pipe plug out of the torque converter. There's actually two, one at the top and bottom. You pull them out and drains the torque converter. And a little gets in the bell housing and drips out of the bell housing for a few days, after. But anyway, I think I'll see about ordering a sump gasket and get a case of Type F, and we'll give that a change. These old Fords, you got to run Type F in them. You know, the GMs that run on Dextron and stuff, yeah, you can put Type F in them and not hurt them, but if you put Dextron in a Ford, you can damage them. So always use your Type F in your Ford. But you can kind of, there. Gotta remember sanding all this out and painting it, and what a mess that was. So yeah, I'm glad that mess is over with. Anyway, there we go. All the fittings are greased. You can see some of the grease is still oozing out of that tie rod end. And I over grease it, get some of the old grease out of the boots and stuff. Oops, I'm knocking the camera silly. And then in the spring, I'll just hit every fitting with a pump or two, just because the oils, they kind of dissipate out of the waxes. The waxes are what make the lubricants thicker, and the oil leaves them, and then you end up with, just wax. You don't have any real oils for lubrication. So I'll lube it up again in the spring. Whoops, I tapped the tail or the exhaust pipe with the camera. The grease on the U-joint that oozes out, I try and wipe as much of that up as I can, because it'll sling out of there from centrifugal force all over the floor pan, and it'll get on the exhaust, and then you'll smell it until it burns off. But anyway, everything looks good under here. I like to, just kind of jack the car up and give the undercarriage a good gandering over. And everything looks really nice. And like I say, That's no ends, its, or buts about it, the sump, because the rest of the transmission's dry as a bone. Everything's done. It's off the jacks. Everything's greased. All the fluids are checked. I checked the brake, the power steering fluid. I'm going to check the transmission after I drive it. I checked transmission just a week or so ago, and I checked the air in all 5 tires. And so let's start it so the oil pressure comes up. Look, make sure there's no leaks on the oil filter, and make sure everything's all good. Better open the garage door, let the exhaust out. Alright, we'll let it run a minute, warm up, and then I'll check the oil level and look, make sure the oil filter, nothing's, I don't see any leaks at the oil filter or anything. And looks good. Alright, I'm going to put the jack and stuff away while the garage door is open. And we'll go for a short little ride on the second day of December after changing the oil. And just warm it up a little bit, and then we'll put it back in the garage, and who knows when the next time I'll have it out will be. If we don't get snow and salted roads, it'll be a little longer, because I'll still drive it once in a while. I mean, you know, a couple 100 miles on the oil isn't going to hurt anything. Get a little video of driving it, I guess. So you can see the roads aren't white, so it doesn't appear that they've been salted. These ones haven't anyway. I'll drive through a couple of neighborhood streets here and go over and check on the Bel Air. I haven't been over to it in a while, so we'll give it a little checky. Really super windy out today. You can hear the wind rushing over the convertible top. Alright, I'll start you back up when we get over to the Bel Air. Everything looks good here. My mouse poisons aren't touched, but you know, I like to still pull the cover up and look under the hood and make sure there's no signs of mice on anything, and look to open the door and look at the interior. See, there's no mouse droppings on the engine or fenders or mouse tracks or anything that I can see. Oh, I need my keys. I keep forgetting I locked the door in this car here. Again, why, I don't know. A little itty bitty key that works this car. That key works everything. The trunk, the ignition, the doors, everything. And everything looks good inside the car too. Lock it back up. And throw the cover back on. And go for a little more of a ride in the Galaxie to warm it up. This is, I got some grease on the door I gotta wipe off from crawling around. There we go. Cover's back all on. Alright, there we go. Car's all checked. There we go, wipe the grease. I had a big glob of grease on the door, so got that wiped off. Might walk around, just make sure didn't get any grease on anything else. Oh, looks good. What about the bumper from putting my hands on it? No, that looks good too. just on neighborhood streets, you know, so I can't go ripping along. Look at what the camera is videoing when I'm driving, so you just get whatever you get. I just hold the camera, but I watch where I'm going and do my driving. Snow on the ground yesterday, cruising in the car today. Not bad. Alright, I'm going to stop the camera while I wait for the light. Their Christmas lights up here. This is Woodward we just turned on to. Yeah, I got the heater fan off and I can totally feel the heat blowing in. Like I say, it's super windy out. Go up a little bit here on Woodward. I don't know if I'm going to video it all or not, but just to get it up to 45, 50 for a mile or two. Went under Interstate 696. go too far. I'll go up here before the next light. I can turn left and maybe go in through some of the neighborhoods in Huntington Woods. Kind of nice up in there. I'm gonna stop the camera while we're sitting here. Stop. I just came up Woodward and did a left cross Woodward, and now we're in the town or community of Huntington Woods. Just go for a little short drive here. Oh, they're cleaning up their leaves, which are piled everywhere. I just like to warm the car up, you know. I don't like just starting and stopping the engine. That's just too hard. It gets condensation and things and just wreaks havoc on stuff. And my camera battery is rapidly draining, so I don't know how much more I'm gonna be able to video for you guys here, but I just thought I'd do a little video of just driving around some of the neighborhoods. These bicyclists are supposed to obey the traffic laws, but often they don't. They just blow through the stops like as if there isn't one there, so I always sit there and wait. I don't want to get hit by a bicyclist. A lot of neat houses in this area. Resurfacing. This is as rough as can be. Surprised my camera hasn't died yet. This rough road. Well, we're almost back to Woodward here. I don't see anyone out cruising today other than myself. Well, I did see a like an MG convertible with its top down at that. Maybe it doesn't have a top. Can you hear the happy axle sing a little bit? You can barely hear it, but they say a singing axle is a happy axle. About 45-50 it sings just a little bit. You can just barely hear it. When the top's down, you don't hear it at all because the top insulates back there. But with the top up, you can totally hear it a little bit. guess the camera shut off. I was gonna check the trans fluid, but the battery had gone dead. So we'll light the sun states right on the stick. Check hot, idling in park. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's in park. And I put about 8-10 miles on the car. Nice and good at operating temperature. And it just shows a tad above full. I'm not going to bother with that a little bit because I'm going to be taking the sump off to put a new gasket on it. Anyway, there we go. All the maintenance is done. Well, I checked the oil in the crankcase and that's right up full, so all the fluids are spot on. Everything looks good. Check the coolant in the radiator. Everything. So that's doing the maintenance on the Galaxie. If you like the video, definitely hit the like button. If you like my channel, you can hit that 348 engine icon. That'll subscribe you. That pops up above there. And thank you for watching my videos.